World War I ended 100 years ago, and for 99 years, the United States has honored its veterans on November 11th. This year, instead of thanking a veteran for their service, ask one to share a story. Decades ago, I learned firsthand how cathartic it could be for those who served to have someone listen to their experiences. Hello there, this is Allison Cardivold with a special Veterans Day message to honor all those who have served our country. Veterans Day began as Armistice Day on November 11th in 1919, on the first anniversary of the end of World War I. It's a day to pay tribute to all American veterans, living or dead, but especially those still living who served this country honorably during war or peacetime. Currently, there are more than 16 million living veterans who served during at least one war. Another 5.2 million veterans living in the United States have served in peacetime. Though only about 558,000 of them remain living today, 16 million Americans served during World War II. 20 years ago, I was privileged to attend a gathering of World War II veterans and record their stories. For days, I listened to whatever they were willing to share. It was 5 decades after the war, but back at the place their journey began, surrounded by peers, some revealed stories they had previously never told their wives or children. The emotion and pain that crept up on these proud men surprised me, their families, and them. The interviews took place at a reunion of sailors that had gone through boot camp at the second largest World War II naval training facility in the world. Almost 300,000 prepared for war at the Farragut Naval Training Station, located in, of all places, North Idaho. And believe me, it was remote. They wanted to get it away from the possibility of being bombed by the Japanese after Pearl Harbor, so they literally built it on the spot where there was nothing before. The camp was only in operation a few years, and there is little physical evidence left of it today, just some old concrete foundations and the brig that now serves as a museum. The rest is a state park. It's a beautiful place, and it was a very short-lived history, but it was an important part of the World War II efforts, and it was an important part of the men who went through this boot camp and, in the following years, decades, their families. When the first family asked if they could listen in on the interview, I agreed on the condition that they promise to be silent and remain out of both the cameras and the subject's line of sight. It was only after I began receiving hugs and hearty handshakes and just emotional thank yous from those eavesdropping family members that I really began to understand what an honor was being bestowed on me. I was shocked when the first wife said, "He has never told me that story before." My mission changed somewhat after that. Officially, I was there to get stories I could use in a documentary about the training station, but we rolled hours of tape I knew I could never include. KSPS, the PBS station I was doing the documentary for, gave copies of all those raw interviews to that little museum in the hopes that others could someday come and hear these men's story. That was great. That was a wonderful gesture, and the curator of the museum loved it. But the most important thing that happened those weekends was the healing I was allowed to witness. Even 50 years after their experiences, these men carried the burdens of war. Some lost hundreds of shipmates at a time. Some saw entire battleships destroyed. Some never saw a shot fired in battle. What each experienced was their own, as was how each coped with it. but all of them, every single one, had returned changed forever. On the website, I've embedded the old documentary that includes some of the stories these men experienced when most were just mere boys. Most of the recruits were teenagers. You can watch a little bit of it, at least the first part. Those are the war stories. But how they approach this whole situation as a country is pretty amazing as well. Put aside old graphics and things like that and listen to what they're telling us. And we can learn a lot about why we call those people the greatest generation. When I found that documentary by chance this week, it made me think about how important it is to listen, not to just think. And when I went and found a veterans advocate who talked about it, it really didn't surprise me. Veteran advocate Jake Woods wrote an article for military.com, and in it he says, quote, "I find myself repeatedly thanked for my service after I give talks at universities and corporations. I never treat those thank yous negatively. I appreciate them, although sometimes they make me feel uncomfortable. But what I'm really looking for is understanding. It is my personal, non-scientific belief that the predominant driver of mental injury in veterans is moral in nature. In order for a young man or woman to make sense of the actions they took overseas, of the loss they suffered and the pain they observed or inflicted, they must feel emotionally and morally unified with their fellow citizens. If they feel pain at the loss of their brother or guilt over the life they had to take, they want you to feel it too. Thank you does no better at easing such pain and guilt than does a disability payment from the VA. True healing comes when the burden is spread from the 2.5 million that shouldered it to the 300 million that placed it upon them." Unquote. Woods went on to give a piece of advice. He said, quote, "This Veterans Day, escape your comfort zone. Find a veteran and thank them. Then put your arm around them and ask to hear their story. Perhaps we'll begin to heal together." Unquote. Of the 21.2 million veterans living in our country, each day, at least 20 of them take their own lives. Data from 2016 indicates that veterans account for 14% of all adult suicides in the United States. This is despite the fact that only 8% of the country's population has served in the military. Since 9/11, less than 1% of the nation has served. According to the Veterans Crisis Line, even seemingly small actions can have a huge impact. Their experts say we all can do something to help the veterans in our lives. Preventing suicide begins with a willingness to be there, they say. So on this Veterans Day, or any other time you meet one of the millions who have served, don't just thank them. Take some time to listen to what they need to share. You never know, sacrificing a bit of your time might actually help save someone's life. You can agree or disagree, because I'm just saying. To any veterans who might be listening, if you want to talk, I'll listen. Email me through the website, gistsay.com. Enjoy this November and know that your service is appreciated. Until next time, if you want to know what's coming up on Just Saying, follow the website, follow the podcast, follow us on social media. The next podcast up, we'll be talking about extremism on the left and the right. Join us, won't you?